I have gone ahead and started the recording. There's a few housekeeping things that I wanted to jump into prior to starting off the agenda today. As you may know, we usually do these community calls on the third week of every month. Due to some scheduling conflicts with some ongoing community calls that are already going on with Eclipse, we've decided to move this to the fourth week. However, the office hours will continue to be on Wednesdays at this time. If you do not have a recurring calendar block for the community call as well as the office hours, please ping me in some way, and we can make sure that you have that if you're interested in joining. Awesome, cool. So as always, the community call is an opportunity for the Symphony team to connect with the community and vice versa. So all this is an opportunity for you to get the latest demos and progress, get updates on upcoming releases, which we follow a monthly release cadence. And also, hopefully, this call we can really get some feedback and ask questions on some of the pieces that we want to discuss today. This is obviously a conversation rather than just a presentation. So if there's anything that anybody would like to come off mute and talk about, I'm more than willing to kind of derail the presentation in any way so we could to give clarity for whoever would like to speak today. And yeah, if there's anything that you would like to talk about, just feel free to unmute, or if you have some permissions blocking you, I'm happy to do that as well. Community involvement, three main pieces that we've been driving so far. Email updates, please join the Google group for updates on Symphony, on any updates in terms of community events that might be coming up or presence at community days and things like that. Join the Discord community that Haishi runs the office hours in. It's an awesome opportunity for you to get some ad hoc support if needed on topics, and it's a perfect opportunity to get expert opinion on things that might be blocking you currently. And yeah, like I said, weekly office hours. So for today, a couple of things. We have a few release notes that we wanted to touch on, and the majority of the session will be driven by Carlton, who has not been able to join yet, but we'll try to ping him to get him on to drive some of the other discussions around the architecture work that's going on currently with Eclipse SDV. But yeah, I'll kick it over to Haishi to go over some of these the roadmap updates.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. So for today, we primarily want to talk about two updates we've brought to Symphony. The first one is the ARM provider. So this provider allows you to take Azure ARM template and deploy to Azure. You can use a template file, either like from local files or from a URL. We'll do the download and set up the parameters. And what's interesting about this provider is that we actually enabled a state-seeking paradigm on ARM. In case you're unfamiliar with ARM, right? ARM itself, it's not really a state-seeking system. And let's say if you have an ARM template and you use the ARM template to provision a storage account, and later on, if you go to your Azure subscription and you delete that storage account, then it's gone, right? There's no one trying to bring it back because it's a one-time deployment. It's not really continuous state seeking as Symfony does. However, if you do this through Symfony, we actually use the Symfony state seeking mechanism. We will actually monitor the Azure resources that is to be provisioned by the ARM template. And if there's any deviations, like if the account is changed or removed or anything happened to it that is not exactly as specified in the ARM template, we will do an incremental deployment to bring it back. So essentially, in this way, we enabled state seeking for the ARM templates. So this is maybe some reason for you to use ARM through Symfony if you want this state seeking capability. And of course, because this is under the Symfony features, you can combine this with Symfony campaigns. For instance, you can add a approval step for you to run approval workflow before the ARM template is deployed. And you can also run some validation steps after the ARM deployment. Let's say your ARM deployment actually deploys some web applications, then you can actually use a HTTP checker to check that if the deployment has been successful. So this has been merged into main and it's available now. We'd really love to see you try it out and see apply it in your scenario. Essentially, this is our first step to enable Symfony to manage hybrid applications that spans cloud and edge. So initially, Symfony is mostly focused on edge applications, but we've heard a lot of feedbacks that for hybrid applications, there's a desire to manage some cloud resources together with the edge resources. And this is why we introduced the ARM provider. And of course, based on the feedback, probably we'll start to bring other cloud providers. And I think just give us feedback about which one is high in your priority list, then we will consider those. And the second changes we bring is the Rust binding. So as you know, Symfony is written in Go language. It's statically linked, which is really beneficial in a lot of cases. For instance, the Symfony API is a single binary that doesn't have any dependencies. Actually, you can do copy deployment to your compatible environment. So it makes the Symfony deployments really easy. But the downside of that is that all the Symfony providers, like target providers and campaign stage providers, they are statically linked into Symfony binary. This means if you contribute a new Symfony provider, you need to contribute to the source code, and we will include that provider into our CI/CD pipeline. Then it will be built into the Symfony binary itself. I mean, you can still do this today, and we do have contributions that made in this manner. But at the same time, we're introducing the Rust binding. So the Rust binding allows you to write Symfony target providers using Rust instead of Go. And another benefit of this is that because the Rust library will be dynamically loaded by Symfony API, so you don't have to like contribute to Symfony source code if you don't want to. You can maintain your own source code and you can just contribute the binary to Symfony ecosystem, and we will do the dynamic loading. And for in the current version, we do a simple hash verification. So basically, before we load the library, we'll validate the hash, which acts as a signature of the library, just to make sure we are loading the expected library. But in the future work, we want to support a proper signature verification if the platform supports it. And there are also discussions about starting a provider marketplace where you can publish your provider with or without source code, right? The contributing to the Symfony source code is no longer a requirement. And we are also doing some researches to auto-generate providers. Basically, the idea is that if the underlying system has an API spec, such as an open API spec, we want to be able to basically to use generative AI to auto-generate the providers. Maybe it's not like fully 100% done, but it will at least serve as a development accelerator. So basically, you can just point our tool to the API spec, and it will generate the skeleton providers, and then you can review and modify it. Then hopefully, this will speed up development of new providers. So Both of these changes merged into main today, actually yesterday, but we haven't made a new release yet. So this will be included in the next month's release. But if you want to try it from the source code, you're welcome to do so. So it's in the main branch. So that's all for this time. Thank you.
I'm going to open up the floor to anybody in the chat that might have any questions, specifically maybe on the Rust binding work that we've been cooking up over here. I know there was an interest there. Please go ahead.
Thanks for presenting this. So the Rust bindings definitely look interesting. Is there some examples, some documentation or something that we can take a look at?
Yeah, actually we have, actually maybe I can share my screen quickly. We provide like a sample provider implementation in the repo, and we are actually working on the documentation updates. There's another PR coming probably later this week. It will cover the details how you write that provider.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Anything else from the team?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So regarding the Rust bindings, so are there any documentation on the bind, how to write, or any, guidelines on how to write the bindings themselves? So, for example, does that mean that I could write a C binding to Symphony, for example, or any other language, in case I need it? Is that something easily or moderately achievable?
Yeah, well, we are working on the documentation. It will come like later this week or early next week. So the essentially when you write a Rust binding, it's compiled into a C library. So in theory, you can actually just use C to write that implementation. I mean, I haven't tried it myself, but it's definitely, I mean, it is a C library anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to load my Visual Studio code, but somehow it's been very slow today. We can go ahead with other discussions, but when my screen comes up, I can briefly show you where to find the code samples and such.
Fair enough. Felipe, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually for the digital signature, what do you have in mind in terms of providers of official digital signatures for the verification? Any thoughts there?
So for this one, actually, I haven't looked into details. I mean, I was mostly familiar with like a Windows side signature, right? Where you sign your binaries with your certificate. I would assume Linux probably has similar mechanism, but whatever standard mechanism we want to support that. As for today, we only do like a simple hash validation.
Okay, and when you said that it will come in the future, so it's in the roadmap, right? Or
yeah,
what?
definitely.
So we're going to investigate in the next coming months.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and also if you have some suggestions, by all means. I mean, I'm open to suggest.
Yeah, of course. So there is a reason for this question, right? I'll be working on a platform, and hopefully, if everything goes well, I will take a dependency on Symphony, and of course, security is of concern importance, and that's why I was quite looking into it. But again, I'll bring more questions moving forward, or post it on the GitHub.
Yeah, sounds great. But definitely, we want to harden the security posture as we go. we definitely don't want to like load arbitrary code into the system, right? And this is another improvement we're working on, which is to isolate the provider process outside of the Symfony API pod, which means you can actually load a subset of providers or even individual providers into a separate process, and you can assign like different credentials or different access rights to those processes, so that you don't have to grant like a Symfony process access to all the underlying system. So this makes the system more secure, right? Because you only apply the minimum required access to the process that you need.
But as of today, even with the REST binding, although you are loading it dynamically, it's still being loaded into the same process of Symfony, right?
Yes, yes. But once we have the process isolation, it will work for all the providers, including the Rust binding providers.
Okay, I see. Okay, again, it's a follow-up question for me to understand how so basically you create a process and you load a provider, or do you rely on some other external system to do that for you?
I mean, out of box, we will definitely provide the experience. So basically, you can just package your providers into a separate, let's say, Docker container or separate pod in the deployment. But if you want to take over that lifecycle management, you can do that as well. Because in that case, Symfony is just using a remoting interface, over MQTT or HTTPS to call that process. I mean, you can take the ownership of that lifecycle.
Okay, cool. Again, good topics for follow-up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, Ashi.
Sure. And I don't know if we need to move to the next topic because my screen is up. If desired, I can quickly show 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think quickly go ahead. Leonardo has graciously been able to kind of drive some of the conversation around the orchestration stuff. So please go ahead and we can move to that. Okay. Yeah, just quickly show you. So basically the Rust provider is just another provider we support. If you go to the provider folder, you can see these are the providers we currently support, and this is the Rust provider. So the Rust provider has two parts. One is this Rust binding. Essentially, this is our Rust SDK. Actually, we've already received feedback to publish this to the Cargo repository. I think we will do that pretty soon, so that you don't have to refer to our source code. Then you can just reference from the standard Cargo create repository to use this. And to answer the question, right, essentially we have the C header file to define the function signatures. I mean, if you write a C library that's compliant to this interface, I guess we can just load it as well. And under the Rust providers, we have a mock provider as a sample. And if you look into this implementation, basically you need to implement one interface, which is called iTargetProvider. And this interface has three methods: a get validation rule, and the get, which gets the current state, and apply, which applies to the desired state. So it's a really simple interface. And because of the Rust binding SDK, I would say, we've migrated all the Symfony types natively to Rust types. So as a Rust provider, you are just natively working with the Rust types defined in this binding library. Then it's just regular Rust implementation. Okay, that's all. Like I said, we will add documentation
later this week. Yeah, I'm done.
Great, thanks a lot.
Cool. Hopefully that gives some clarity. I want to pass it over to Leonardo now to kind of cover some work that's been done within Eclipse SDV on an all-up architecture around orchestration. So I'll share my screen on something that team has been cooking up, and hopefully Leonardo can share a little bit of context there.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So in the orchestration working group, in the Eclipse SDV, we've been talking about how different orchestrators on board could connect to Eclipse Symphony or even to other off-board orchestrators in general. Using Eclipse Symphony as the off-board orchestrator in here. So building here, you can see that you have already the Symphony server or in the cloud, and then in the vehicle or on board, you'd have a component that we are calling Met Orchestrator. Terms may change a little bit in general. So the Met Orchestrator, it's kind of, I think what you call in Symphony a provider, which basically what connects Symphony to the actual orchestrator in the car, which in this case could be Caius, Bluetooth, Piccolo, Eclipse Canto, and so on. In Bluetooth, we have a term called State Manager, but can use any other term that you want here. Basically, State Manager is basically something. It is a component that bridges the orchestrator and whatever the off-board orchestrator is telling the state of a given workload to be. So in this particular case, each state manager for each orchestrator would have to implement its own state manager component to connect to this Met orchestrator in the car in Symphony or provider. And there, this state manager to connect to the actual orchestrator would basically tell it to update the workload, what kind of includes firmware and so on, or to remove an workload or whatever needs to be done. And for that, we were talking about maybe in implementing or using your protocol as a way to standardize the connection between the orchestrator, the Meta orchestrator, and even maybe between the Meta orchestrator and the Symphony server, something that your protocol call use service. So basically, the use service has the good enough interfaces that would work as a API footprint or interface. So it could have different orchestrators for both. How they would choose interfaces to and implement a new service. So you can easily swap between orchestrators in this diagram. So that's basically what obviously the artifact bit's not part of the of Symphony. That's something that would be a different component entirely. But that's basically what we started to work on. So I think the main idea now is to explore implementing new services, a new service for all the available orchestrators in the blueprint. That would be my quickest introduction to the topic.
Yeah, super helpful. Thank you, Leonardo. Hashi, please go ahead. I think the whole reason we wanted to bring this up today was to kind of start a joint discussion between the Symphony team and the team working on this together.
Yeah, thank you. I think from Symphony's perspective, the Symphony Meta orchestrator is actually the Symphony remote agent. If we are talking about a single site deployment, right? So basically, the Symphony server is making the orchestration decisions. Then the Symphony remote agent is able to carry out those decisions on a remote environment. And actually, I did have a conversation with Kai, who's looking at to create a U protocol provider using the Rust binding. And I spoke to Ankayo's team a long time ago, and I promised to make Ankayo's provider using Rust binding. And now, since the Rust binding is ready, I think that's probably what I'm going to do next. I don't expect there's a lot of problem because essentially we're just calling into the Ankayo's API from the Rust provider. But I think, yeah, architecturally, I think that this aligns with Symphony pretty well.
I have another
One
question.
note regarding Ankaios. So we are also preparing a Rust SDK for Ankaios. We already have kind of a beta version. It's not released yet, but before you start working on the connection with Ankaios, just let us know. We can at least provide you the beta of the Rust SDK, and it would be easier to integrate.
No, that would be awesome. Actually, I'm planning to work on this next week. If you could share me some information, then that would be great. I don't expect this provider will take like more than a week to do.
All right. Well, I'll send you some information. Okay.
All right,
Thanks.
great. Thank you.
Great. On this, Leonardo, do you is there a cadence that the team is working on this? Obviously, there's the monthly one. What can we expect as next steps here around this work?
I think we talked about raising issues on each orchestrator's repository to get this, one for Kaios and Tribucci and so on, to get the actual work started, or at least aware of the orchestration of each orchestrator's development team. Basically follow from there, besides our monthly meetings in Eclipse SDB for status report and so on.
Is there a confirmation that this will be done at community days to share it out, or is this a wider work item that might take a little bit longer?
I think might take a little longer.
Okay.
Might be a good idea to. I don't know if you already have something related for community days for this part of the orchestration work. If not, it may be a good idea to plan a presentation of what we not having actually maybe any tangible to show, but at least just to share what we are working on, maybe to raise awareness and bring more people on board and so on.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Let's see if Carlton's supportive, and then hopefully we can at least broach the conversation to give a high level overview and essentially this introduction as well. So yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal to have, because say in the ideal situation, if we can bring the Ankaios provider, and Piccolo, I assume that's the pupil rate. They already have the provider in Symphony. We just haven't finally merged it yet. So, and if we could get something going with your protocol, I think it would be a really nice, like a better together story to tell to the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see. It's a very tight schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But hopefully we're able to lock that down. Awesome. Thank you so much for the folks that were able to join today. I kind of want to open up the floor to any topics, even outside of just the topics that were on the agenda today regarding Symphony, or STV topics that might concern Symphony as well. And if there was anything. No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. This has been a great community call. The recording will be posted in the next few hours on the YouTube and shared via the Slack as well as the GitHub, just to make sure that folks that haven't seen it can take a look. And yeah, regarding this piece on the orchestration topics, there is a monthly community call that is focused on that. So if you're on the SDV community calendar, you should have that already. And then in regards to specifically Symphony, for the community call that happens on the 4th week of every month. And if you don't have that on your calendar, please let me know. I'm happy to get that added. Cool. Thanks so much for joining, y'all.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.